You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, Daxx Nielsen, has been the drummer for the band Cheap Trick for the past 13 years, but he is also a multi-instrument studio musician, and he has so many great stories. We talk about the touring life as well as home life, and we'll hear what he and the band have coming up this year and into their 50th year in 2024. So come along with me as I catch up with Daxx Nielsen. Daxx, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And where are you right now?
I'm in my new studio. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona earlier in 2022 for various reasons, but it's warm here and I've got a suntan all year round. And so I got my new room getting together. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm all up and running. Starting to do trash for people when I'm not touring, which is most of the year. But when I'm here, it's great.
That's so great. Yeah. And speaking of touring, so you are going back out really soon for like a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously everybody has the same story, but for the last 2 years, like everything's postponed. And then so 2022, we did 180 shows because we had 2 years of postponements and rebookings and all that stuff. So, you know, it's great. It means you work 6 months a year, but that also means you have 6 months a year off. That's the way I look at it. You know, it's not like, oh, I worked so much this year. It's like, well, I also had a ton of time off. It's
Absolutely.
not 365 days. So yeah, we moved out here and just getting organized and set and get the kids in school and all the things.
I love it.
I leave in about a week from today for the rest of the year. Not the rest of the year of touring. So
yes. Well, and I was looking at your tour dates and I was just like, oh my gosh, you and Cheap Trick as a band, you tour a lot, you know, and in obviously non-COVID years,
right.
You guys tour a lot. So it's awesome to see you back out and, you know, almost kind of like normal feeling, I guess.
It's getting there. You know, it was the first re-entry to the touring world was weird and so many rules, but these days it really feels like it's almost back to quote unquote normal. Like it used to be. We still don't do meet and greets, but I'm hoping those come back. So bring some friends back and have some people look at my gear or whatever and just have, because it's always awkward to like, hey, I'll meet you at the merch stand, and all of a sudden you're out there and people see you, and I don't consider myself a rock star or a celebrity, but people recognize you and you're just trying to talk to your friend. You're like, oh, I wish we were backstage so we could just catch up in the peace and quiet. Yeah.
I feel like it'll return to that. And I know like last year, some of the shows that I went to, it was still like that, you know, just everyone taking precautions because no one wants to get, you know, have a band member get sick and then have to be off the tour. And, you know, that's no fun.
So many liabilities. And, you know, we were in Australia. We were the first band. It was Cheap Trick, Stone Temple Pilots, and Bush. We were the first international artists allowed back in. Wow. And it was like, we're in this bubble and there's all these people around. And we're like, if one of us gets sick, we can't just like postpone the date and come right back in 2 weeks to do it. So
seriously. Yeah.
It's so nerve wracking, especially when you're that far away. You can't just like, hey, we'll come back in September. And like, no, there's no coming back until 2 years from now, you know.
You needed to make that work for sure.
Absolutely. And we did.
And I think, you know, when you talk about downtime, like having 6 months of downtime, I think we all view downtime a little bit different now that we're post-COVID than we did pre-COVID. You know, a lot of us got a little like, oh, okay, you know, this is different. I'm home. That's not normal. And, you know, I interviewed Ronnie Vannucci for one of the first podcast episodes. And I remember him saying something that stuck with me, which was he didn't realize that there were flowers that grew in front of his house because he was never home in the springtime. Right. And that just like blew my mind because it was such a perfect image of kind of missing that. And I'm just wondering if that changed for you too, as far as like your priorities go, being home and the family time and all of that.
Absolutely. I have 2 little kids, 5 and 6 years old, and now I have a 6-month-old puppy. So when I was single, I fly me home for Christmas Day. And then I got married and like, okay, like, can I come home every 2.5 weeks at least for a few days? And then you have kids, you're like, how little do I have to work in order to make the living I need to make so I could be with these guys? So then, the pandemic happened and I got to spend 18 months watching my little guys grow up. And it's, as you have children every day. They're different.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's going to be hard to go back on the road. But now it's like, it's going to be good. And we've all settled into a groove and a routine, if you will. And I'm just like hungry to go back on the road because I've been home, so long.
Which is even a good feeling too, right?
You just worked so much last year, but even then you come home and I can switch that gear, like take my boots off and put my slippers on and get on the floor and play with my kids. And
for sure.
Home studio. So I'm, do tracks for people, which I, prior to the pandemic, I never had because we worked so much. And then I got a bunch of great outboard gear and microphones. And for a year, I just did remote sessions for anybody and everybody that I could. And that got to be really great. I learned how to work the DAWs and all that. And
that's great.
So now it's like a nice mixture between home studio and the road.
For sure. I think we all had to learn a lot about technology that we didn't know before. So that part I think was good, and the family time and all of that, and getting to see the kids, grow and every single day with them. And
you kind of realize like your time's finite, but you also have a ton of time. Like, what do I fill my day with? There's normally there's a flight, and then and then you have 2 hours before sound check, and then you have 2 hours in the show, and then it's on to the next city. Yes. When you're sitting at home, you're like, okay, it's 8 a.m. and I've got 12 hours till the kids go to bed.
Right. What do I do? It was really strange too. I agree with you. I mean, I was never home. I didn't travel, like touring travel to that extent, but I was never home straight for like more than a couple of months. And so that was a strange transition. I actually took up gardening. Did you find yourself getting any new hobbies?
I mean, I've always been, I'm a busybody no matter what. So like, I became a yard guy. I became a handyman. Hey, we've always wanted dimmers in this room. So I learned how to wire electricity and not kill myself. Just all the honey-do list, if you will. Just like
sure, I think we all got a lot done. Yeah.
My house is immaculate. Everything was perfect and working order.
And so that is so great. And speaking of being home and being with the kids and all of that and seeing them grow, I want to talk about your childhood because you were born into like basically rock and roll royalty, right? With your dad. And how did that kind of affect your musical leanings as you were growing up?
I mean, the nice thing was kind of like my house now. I mean, there was always a drum set. There was always a million guitars. There was a grand piano and just anything you wanted to, like if you wanted to. I've got 3 siblings, but only 2 of us are musicians. Nothing was ever forced on us, but, I'd walk by and be like, oh, that's fun. Or, you can just literally pick up a guitar in the corner and just strum and teach yourself how to play. And that was always, I always loved music, and I was a really shy kid. I was never a sports guy. I was never a jock. I was never, big and handsome and all that stuff. So just wanted to like put myself in a room and just play along with my favorite bands and just dream about being a musician or, it was subliminal, but like, I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I went to college for 1.5 years and like, what am I doing? I'm going to get a degree in what? But I just want to go on the road. So, I mean, I've been touring since I was 17. I'm 42 now,
Wow.
One of those things. But yeah, growing up, I probably went to my first concert when I was 6 months old or something, and when you're a teenager, when you're young, you don't really think about your dad as being that guy. I knew he played music, but we had an 8,000 seat arena in our hometown, Rockford, Illinois, and Motley Crue would come through, or Poison, or you name it, Guns N' Roses. And they would always come over to my dad's house after and party, like 80s partying.
Sure.
So I would sit at the top of the stairs and just learn a lot of things I wasn't supposed to know about at that age. So I did just one of those things. And I remember Tommy Lee came over one day to my dad's newish house in like 88. He goes, man, I need a crib like this. And then like 4 years later, he was MTV Cribs. I was like, I'd never heard that word, crib. But then you start this guy that I think is the coolest guy in the world thinks my dad's cool. You
Right.
know, just little stuff like that. But we were talking earlier before the interview, you know, we both live in small towns or grew up in small towns. Like there was no, you know, when he was home, he'd still go to the grocery store, and same with when I got older and did the same thing. Like there's no, it's blue collar, small town. I never thought of it that way until like you go and actually see a show and you go, oh my God, there's 10,000 people here to see him, you know?
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing. That's amazing. So those are the moments where you really kind of like, where it struck you, like who he was, what the band meant to people and all of that.
Absolutely. And then, you know, they had their ups and downs like every band kind of does. And when I was born, it was just past their heyday of like the Live at Budokan era. And then, you know, the early 80s kind of they sank. And then 87, 88, they had a #1 hit with The Flame. And then in the 90s, they went back down. And 98, they came back up. You know, it's like, and then in 2016, I joined the band in 2010. And then 2016, they got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is, I mean, that's as big as it. I mean, that means you affected people and, you know, you're a household name. So that it's been fun to watch and it's good to be a part of it, really.
Absolutely. And so did you grow up listening to Cheap Trick music all the time? Like what was playing or what were you into?
I mean, when I was a kid, I loved like the Violent Femmes, Nine Inch Nails, Right Said Fred, EMO, what were they called? EMF. You're unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Like just I liked, you know, that era of music. And, you know, at one point George Harrison Got My Mind Set on You. That video came out and had all the animals in the background.
Oh my gosh. I was obsessed with that. I mean, we're the same age, so I feel like we have that same time frame. Yeah.
I think like that was my first, obviously like the Beatles is just in your subconscious. You've heard those songs in the car or somebody's house, but like that was my first introduction to the Beatles. I was like, I didn't know who he was, but I loved that song. The video was hilarious, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
But, and then eventually like into Metallica and Pantera, and my heart, Rage Against the Machine and all that. And then I went to like the Dave Matthews era, you know, the early 2000s, like
right.
90s. And then my wife laughs at me. I'm like, I'm going backwards. Like the Beatles is about where I start. And then who did they listen to? And, you know, I just love the old audio, you know, just 4 guys in a room playing music together instead of, you know, there's nothing wrong with the music today, how it's made, but those guys, you had to be perfection. You had to be like, you had to hit that song in one take. If there was a little clunker, as long as it wasn't so bad, you just left it on the album, you know? And I think that's like the personality of all of it. So
I love that. And I feel like I bring this up in almost every podcast lately, but I have to because the Beatles come up every time. And the documentary Get Back like sticks in my head so much. And, you know, you just mentioned George Harrison, and I didn't really understand what he brought to the Beatles. And like, you know, and I saw him as a solo artist, of course, like, but like thinking about or watching that documentary and seeing his contribution and the first episode where his contributions were kind of written off, you know, and it was kind of painful to see that and see that strife, but seeing them come together, no pun intended. Sorry. But like it just was such an amazing thing to see, and my respect level for the musicianship it skyrocketed for those reasons that you mentioned, with them being together, figuring out the music, and then watching the recording process.
Right.
So fascinating.
And at one point we could go on for hours about the Beatles.
Of course.
You know, George walks in, he's like, I think I wrote a pretty good tune. It's like, here comes the greatest song you've ever written or ever heard. They're all like, where did you come from, dude?
Right.
Been here the whole time. Sorry. You know?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was just like, it was incredible. And like, and then the Traveling Wilburys, you know, all that stuff. Oh my goodness. So good.
The funny thing is I saw a meme the other day, and like, besides Roy Orbison, all those guys were in like their 40s. They're like my age, and you're thinking of these old geezers. You're like, no, they were like not even 50 when that band came out. You're like, oh god.
It's so amazing. I was also obsessed with Roy Orbison as a kid too. Like I look back on my musical like choices as a child, like as a young child, you know. between, maybe 6 and 11 years old. And those were the people that I loved listening to, of course, influenced by what my parents were listening to, but it is interesting. Okay, so just another question too about you discovering music and all of that. Did you always want to play drums? You said when Tommy Lee came to the house, you were like, yeah, he's the coolest guy ever. So how did that come about? Like, how did you settle on drums?
Honestly, my parents put me into piano lessons when I was in kindergarten, all the way till I graduated high school. So I took 12 years of piano.
Wow.
And I really think piano, if you can learn piano, it's left and right hands. There is a pedal, you use it sometimes, but you learn scales, you learn theory, you learn all of it. And so because I took piano, I grabbed a guitar one day when I was about 12 and I put that on my lap and I played do you remember who Jeff Healey was? He was the blind guitar player in Roadhouse. But
yes.
I taught myself how to play guitar like this, and then eventually switched it. But I have a good ear and I had the theory from piano and all that. And so, but my dad's a guitar player and my older brother Miles is a guitar player. And I didn't want to be the third guitar, the third string backup, double backup guitar player. And like I said, I was a shy kid. So like hiding behind like Nico McBrain, just like put all the cymbals and drums in front of you so nobody can see you kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I never wanted to be the guy that was like up front pointing at people and look at me. I wanted to be the guy in the back, and I was the only drummer in the family. They were both guitar players. My dad says he started on the drums, but I've never heard him play in my 42 years. So I just kind of picked up all the instruments and I still play to this day. So all my recording, I can, I do drum tracks for people, but I'll also add keys or guitar or bass if they need be.
That's great. I mean, that's incredible to have that, to be able to offer that, right?
It's just one of those things. I think any musician listening to this, you realize when you're young, like not everybody can figure this out, like anybody can learn chords, but to actually like know what they mean and put them together and make it flow and work not everybody has that talent. I can't throw a football. I can't, I'm a decent golfer at best, but I can't hit a baseball, but I can play 7 instruments. It's like you have to figure out what is good for you in life. And some people are great at sales, salesmen, or I don't, whatever, what I'm trying to say is like,
absolutely.
You kind of realize at a young age, like I'm actually pretty good at this and this makes sense to me. And like, I listen to an album and my wife hears all the lyrics. I'm awful with lyrics, but I can hear the bass line and the key and like, check out that bass line. She's like, which one's the bass? I have no idea what you mean.
Yeah.
Isn't this bad? He's talking about the love of his life moved to, I'm like, what are you talking about? So music just kind of came naturally and it's just something I've always loved. And I've been fortunate my hobby became my job. You asked earlier, did you come up with any hobbies? I'm like, I don't have any hobbies because I'm like so immersed in music. That's all I've done and all I love. When I'm not playing, I'm listening to music. And
absolutely.
When I'm on the road, I'm playing drums in this room or whatever it might be, So I need to come up with a hobby, but I don't have any other hobbies at this point.
Well, you know what? Like what you just said it, right? Your hobby became your job. And like I say all the time, how lucky are we? I don't play music for a living. But I still feel so incredibly grateful for the fact that I get to do what I love every day and, and just be in it. And I just think it's so, it's just such a gift to have that in your life. But you're right. Discovering that like you have a talent for something at a young age it's incredible because, you focused on that. And like you said, you've been touring since you were a teenager, right? So
right.
You got to do it.
People say like it's a small world, and like in this music world, like when somebody says it's a small world, it's like that's a good thing. I'm glad I'm a part of this circle that I know you and I know guitar players and drummers of all kinds. It's like these are my friends. These are people that if I wasn't in this industry, I think they were the coolest. I'd look up to them, and I still do. But I also have their phone numbers now.
Right. Exactly. Great. Which is, we think is cool, but I'm sure that you have this experience with your kids where you're like a couple of different things. They don't care who's in your phone, right? Like that just doesn't not impress them.
Not at all.
But like the other part is, I don't know if you do this, but you mentioned picking out the bass line and all of that. I do that with my kids all the time. I'm always like, oh, did you hear that? Did you just hear that? Or that's my favorite part's coming up. And my kids are just like, my gosh, like, because it's that's what we hear and we want to share it. We get passionate about it, right?
It makes me jump out of my skin. Like when I hear something great, like a bass line or a cool harmony or some drum fill that we all know. We've all,
Of course, we can all air drum too.
Yeah.
I always pick like when I think about bass lines, the first one that always comes to mind, and I think I've posted about it numerous times, but Time After Time, the bass line and Time After Time, like just kills me every time I hear it. I'm like, ooh, it's so good.
I mean, that song is great, but the production's just wonderful too. I mean, everything about it. It's oh boy, it's timeless.
It all comes together.
I wonder, like, it's that doesn't matter that it was from the 80s. You could listen to it now and be like, this sounds perfect. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said something else too that struck me with being a drummer and kind of being shy and being behind the kit. And I that fascinates me so much because it comes up often that, as drummers, we are able to kind of like hide behind our instruments,
right?
Not be right out there, not be face forward, not be the ones, pointing at the crowd or any of that. But it makes us bond to each other, I think, because we have that mutual feeling and right. And so like I see your Instagram post, and just like all of us, you're out on the road and like the drummers come out and hang and they see you, and we all have this like love for each other that's unbreakable, I guess.
It's true. I mean, that's the nice thing. The crummy part is that we can't see each other's shows. Typically, like we're in the same town. Like I was with John Tempesta recently. We were both in St. Paul. It's like, hey, what time are you playing? 8. What time are you playing? 8:15. Okay, let's have lunch. And then we just sat for 3 hours, just the two of us, versus like a backstage. I got to get ready. I got to get my, it's just like we had nothing to think about, but just hanging. And it was those are the best things that happen on the road. When I check Polestar every day, like who else is in town that I might know or that I don't know, but I could kind of weasel my way in and introduce myself. And
yeah.
And there's people like Charlie Hall from the War on Drugs who I was obsessed with that band, and I thought he was the coolest. And I literally just went on Instagram and private messaged him and said, hey, my name's Daxx, and I'm also a Ludwig guy, and I think you're great. Hey, you want to meet up sometime? And we become like best friends, Yeah,
that's
out and say, hey, like I would have never met him, and we send each other Christmas cards now.
It's amazing. That's the amazing part about it. And that, people complain about social media, and I know it's not always the best, but the connection aspect is pretty incredible. And I think that as drummers, there's an openness there to other drummers. I don't know if it's the same way with other instruments, but like you just said, send a message. You send a message on Instagram and you're like, hey, I play the drums too. Like
I'm a big fan,
Right. And it's a bonding experience. I don't know what it is about it, but I love it.
It's amazing. The only downfall I think to social media these days is you have to overpost. They have these algorithms, like if you don't post a lot, you don't get as many likes. And like,
sure.
I'd rather post one cool thing a month or every week than like every day I have to feel like I got to post a picture or a video of something. It's like, save the good stuff. Just don't put it all out there. Put the cool stuff. I don't know. Well, that's kind of backwards too, because you don't want to just put out the cool stuff, because then people think every day is the greatest day of your life. When
right.
Like, hey, today I did this really cool thing, but that happens once a month or once a year. So
absolutely, yeah.
You have to pose. You paint your life to look just great.
Oh. Yes, like everything's perfect. Oh my goodness. Who is this?
That's Boshi. He's my mini golden doodle. He's about 6 months old.
Oh my gosh. So for anyone who's listening and not watching on YouTube, the cutest puppy.
He's pretty sweet.
So adorable.
Good boy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a golden retriever who's
nice. So he's half golden retriever. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And they're the best. The temperament is so great.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to kind of like go back a little bit and ask you about your start in touring. So I know you were in a band called Harmony Riley,
Yes.
right? That was that your first touring band?
Yeah, I mean, because I started that band with my brother Miles. He was the singer, guitar player, and a couple friends in '97. So I'd have been a junior in high school, and
Wow.
we would play every weekend. You know, it was a weird thing. Like in the Midwest, at least, you could play bars as long as you were playing, but you had to leave. You couldn't like sit around the bar, but you were able to play as a minor. So every weekend we'd play shows, and you know, we'd play the ice skating rink and all that stuff around Rockford, and just all of our friends would come and hang. But like we got pretty big, and at, you know, at a certain point we were selling out the House of Blues in Chicago, which was like 1,500 people, and we just toured for seven years, like nonstop. You know, we made 3 or 4 albums, and we got to like here, and just this is making it, and we got like right there, and then just kind of all decided like, okay, we did, you know, almost a decade, and it's not going to happen. So I moved to Los Angeles in 2004 and got a job at Center Staging.
Mm-hmm.
Our good friend Todd Trent, who was with Ludwig for millions of years. He's my mentor in life and in the music industry. I said, hey, I'm moving to LA. What should I do? He goes, get a job, because you're probably not going to be getting gigs, you know, for the first 5, 6, 7 months or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he helped me get a job at Center Staging, and I was just kind of networking, doing auditions and whatnot in the meantime. And long story, I won't even go into it, but through an old friend, I got the Dick Dale gig, who, for all those, especially you, he grew up in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Yes.
He was the king of surf guitar. If you've ever watched Pulp Fiction, the beginning song. So that was my first real gig. That was about 2005. It was about 6 months into LA, and I toured with him as much as he toured. You know, he probably did not many, but probably 60 shows a year. Mm-hmm. And that was my, you know, playing for, he was 68 or 69 when I started playing with him, and I was 24, you know. It was like, I'd grown up around older musicians, but not that old.
Right.
But he went on, I mean, he'd lived to be 82 or something like that, still touring before he finally passed. But that was my first real thing. And I learned a lot. You know, he grew up in the age, like, he was around before the Beatles. So, like, right. You know, all of his cues, you learn, like, okay, when I put my neck down, that means stop. When I do this, it means, you know, I shake my hips. I hit all, like, those Chuck Berry-isms, like, keep an eye on the main guy, because he's telling you what to do. And, you know, it was a lesson in live music for sure. And it was my first time being a hired gun, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I was in a band. I was the drummer, and, you know, a lot of drummers that are in their own band can be hard to work with, or think that they're the most important one in the band. Right. When you finally actually get a paycheck from somebody that is hiring you, you quickly realize they're the leader, and you're there to make them sound good and make them feel good and keep your mouth shut unless spoken to, you know. So that was, you know, like early mid-20s. That was really like my first real thing. And through that, I, you know, went on to do a bunch of other stuff as well.
That's so great. And I recently saw a little clip of an interview of your dad talking about you coming in to play with Cheap Trick. And he paid you a really great compliment about your playing, which I thought was fantastic. How was it to come into the band, you know, being like a family member and all of that?
Right. Well, it was completely never imagined. You know, they were the same 4 original guys basically since 1974. Mm-hmm. I'd filled in a few times over the years when need be. I was kind of like the go-to. You know, I knew all the songs, and I was close enough to be able to play the style that, you know, the great Bunny Carlos has. And, but I mean, I was working on my own, right? You know, living in LA, I was literally 3 days from going to Germany for 3 weeks with an artist. And I got a phone call from management, said, hey, you know, something came up. We need you in 2 days in Austin, Texas. And I was like, I'm going to Germany. And they're like, okay, well, call me back. You know, we need to know, like, right now. So I hung up the phone. I was like, what the hell just happened? You know? So I called a good friend of mine, Brad Pemberton, great drummer. He used to play for the Cardinals. I think he plays for Steve Earle and a few other people. Just great guy, great friend. And he said, even if it's one gig with Cheap Trick, it's cooler than whatever you're doing now. You know, like, it's your dad, you know, and it's the band. Like, they're legendary. Go do it. And so my first gig, 48 hours later, no rehearsals, no real warning, was Austin City Limits. It was the first episode of the 36th season, I think. Like, got cameras in my face, and I'm up there. We were at sound check, like, anything you want to run through? And like, the door, like, can I get out of here? I don't know, but it worked out great. And there was no plan as far as how long I'd be there or what. I figured I'd sub until whatever. Next month is 13 years.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I've been on 4 albums and played well over 1,000 shows with them, just every day you're like, okay, this is, I mean, I was 29 when I joined. I'm 42 now. So you just kind of like, the days are long and the years fly by, they say, especially with music or kids. You're like,
they do. And you just really, right. You just put it in perspective for me too, because I remember getting a call from you when you did get the gig and, to talk cymbals, right. And to think that like we were 29 years old when that phone call happened, that blows my mind a little bit.
And we thought we were kind of getting older or old,
Right. Well, we were almost 30, Daxx.
My God. My knees didn't hurt. My back didn't hurt. Everything, whatever.
It's so crazy. It's crazy to think about. But so, I mean, the past 13 years and playing all these gigs and touring so much, it looks like so much fun. And any Cheap Trick show I've ever been to, I saw the band originally with Bunny, and I've seen you play a couple times, and it's just like so much fun. You all look like you're having a blast out there, even behind the drums, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've never in my all years of my entire life ever seen them phone it in.
No.
You could be exhausted. You could be sick in the dressing room, asleep until 15 minutes before the show. They get up there and something clicks, and it's like you're back in the bar scene in the 70s with them, like just kicking ass. And so that for me, it was always great because I could never, not that I ever would, but I could never phone it in because these guys who were 40 years older than me aren't phoning it. 30 years older than me.
Yeah,
they're not phoning it in, so I definitely can't. So that's just another good life lesson about working in the industry for other people. Like if they're doing it, you have no excuse why you're not.
Right. That's a really good point. That's very
it's just
true.
A fun show, and like I said, it's just a rock show. You come out and there's no frills. So many of these bands have pyrotechnics and big screens and all that, which they're great bands, but they that helps the show. Which
Sure.
I think Cheap Trick is just, it's all about the songs, it's all about the music and the musicians.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And I enjoy having the picks flying around too. That's always like a fun part of the show.
He orders a gross of picks every time he orders, which is like a 10,000. I don't even know.
It's a lot of picks.
Yeah, that's a lot of picks
flying.
He's not even playing guitar half the show. He's just throwing picks at people, which and then people, like you said, that's the songs are great, but you remember that too, like the quirky. Yeah.
That's what I think about, and part of the fun of it, right?
Absolutely.
It's amazing. And so in that time too, touring, having fun on stage, you've toured with so many other bands and had the opportunity to meet and interact with, I'm sure, even as a kid with the Tommy Lee situation, but since then, I mean, is there ever an instance that you can think of where you got starstruck or had an interaction with someone you never thought you would?
I mean, it's hard, to not sound kind of jaded or whatever. Like growing up around it, I've kind of met so many of those people my entire life that
sure
I'm still like, holy cow, that's so and so. But
yeah,
you realize they're just people for the most part. Some of them are aliens. I won't name names. Some of these rock stars are like, well, who is that? Where did that guy come from? And there's no way that he went to elementary school and had a paper route at one point. But I mean, Cheap Trick's always been considered the greatest opening act of all time. That's a term coming from them or other people.
Right.
We open up for anybody and everybody. We've opened up what was that festival in the Download Fest in England? Yes. We're opening up for metal bands, Phil Anselmo from Pantera, or Downed at the time. Pantera was done at the time. He's on side stage and he's my idol. That Pantera is my jam. And and so we tailored our set. We opened up with a song called "Gonna Raise Hell," and we just played all the heavier Cheap Trick songs instead of we didn't play "The Flame." We still play "I Want You to Want Me" because I don't care if you're a metalhead or not. That's still a good tune.
Absolutely.
But then we'll go open up for Pat Benatar or Cyndi Lauper. And then there's always the like-minded bands, like we did, with Foreigner, a full summer, you name it. Aerosmith, we did a bunch with Motley Crue, Stone Temple Pilots, a lot of the similar styles we do as well. But we can also, Peter Frampton and Cheap Trick worked well together.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a vast catalog of their music that we can tailor our sets depending on what the venue is. If we're doing a corporate show, we'll play a 90-minute set of the greatest hits, where if we're playing a club, we won't play half that stuff. We'll play deep cuts for the true fans,
Exactly. Yeah. So you kind of tailor it to the audience.
Yeah. They're one of the bands that doesn't have a firm set that you play on tour every single night and you say the same things, which can be great, but we go out in there like the seat of our pants and just go, if we screw up, which we have plenty of times, if you screw up, start over, you can just say, screw it, we're done. We'll go on to the next song or keep going and just laugh about it. And who cares? It's just rock and roll.
That's a good attitude to have, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's the space for the polished set that now these days, not everything, but a lot of things are on a grid and the lights go with it. And you can't screw up. You have to be exactly, but we're kind of more like a jam band, I think, just there's the form, but if we screw up, we'll just follow the lead singer, just follow the singer. That's what they always say.
Adjust. You'll adjust. You'll pivot, right?
Wherever he starts, and that's fine.
That's great.
It's gone in a second. Move on to the next one.
That's awesome. I have to mention too. You mentioned that you're a huge Pantera fan, and I am as well. And Vinny was just such a great human being. And I know that we were friends as well. So missed, but what a great guy. And I think he was someone that I was really intimidated to meet because he's, he looks intimidating. I don't know.
And you meet him, he's just like this teddy, to answer your question earlier, starstruck. I was 12 years old going to see Pantera, and all of a sudden I'm hanging out in Vegas with Vinny, having drinks, and he gave me his phone number, and he came down to see us in Texas. And how is this happening? How is this I didn't dream that, in the back of your brain, oh, I'd love to be friends with him. But how it actually happened,
Yes.
My favorite hard rock drummer of all time gave me his phone.
Now your friend, right? Yeah.
So it's a shame that him and Dime are gone. Just two of the best guys in the world. It's one of those funny things like Alice Cooper. You think oh, he's mean and scary, and then he's just a golfer. Pantera, they're out there doing this. Then you meet them, they're like, "Hey, man," the nicest guy in the world. So
yes, I think. I've had that experience often, and it's usually the scariest looking people who are the sweetest, big teddy bears, and
absolutely,
it's amazing. I can think of someone who you met who you may have been slightly starstruck by, and I'll mention
Mitch Zalotnik.
Oh, okay. Mitch, of course.
We have to talk about that later.
Shout out to Audie Mute.
He's coming to do my studio soon. Mitch is the greatest. Your place looks incredible, and all the people that you've done are just.
Oh my gosh.
Every room's different. It's tailored to what you want your room to look like and sound like.
Yes. It can literally do anything, right?
It's incredible.
It's amazing. And my space is night and day. The audio for this podcast is night and day. And we're going to work together on some projects coming up, and I'm so excited about it.
Mitch is the best. Hi, Mitch. I know he's going to watch this.
Hi, Mitch. Well, I'll clip this out and I'll send it to him. Hi, Mitch. Okay. But yeah, it's so great. But no, I was thinking of Jimmy Page.
Oh, yes.
Right.
You're talking about an Instagram post.
Yes. That was a real moment, right?
He's taller than you would think. He's like 6 foot. Yeah. And I'm like, you think of these old British guys, they're going to be Mick Jagger's probably 5'6" or something. I don't know. You just assume so. But here comes walking in Jimmy Page. We were in Tokyo doing the Classic Rock Awards, and it was Jimmy Page was winning an award. No, Jeff Beck was winning an award.
Mm-hmm.
Vice versa. I think it was Jeff Beck. Anyway, so Jimmy was going to do the speech and induct him to the Classic Rock Hall of Fame or whatever it was. And so I'm backstage hanging out, and all of a sudden here comes Jimmy Page walking up, just like, if you're back there, you're supposed to be back there. I think it's like the attitude, maybe. You're not just like some fan that's going to like geek out on him. So I'm sitting there talking to him briefly. He's like, "Oh, so you're a drummer?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What kind of drums do you play?" And I said, "I play Ludwig's, sir." And he goes, "Oh, John Bonham played Ludwig's." It's like, "Oh, you don't say. I didn't know that." Just he was so innocent about it and just like, "Oh yeah, John Bonham played Ludwig's."
I love that so much. That's so sweet.
I mean, I'm laughing at just thinking about that actually happened. I got to meet Jimmy Page, and he was like so innocently like, "Oh yeah,"
right?
What's in the world? My drummer played those too. Like, oh, right.
Right. Like so humble and unassuming.
Yes. It was great. I mean, it's one of those things, like it lasted a minute and a half before he moved on and was hanging out with Jeff Beck, or Johnny Depp was there with the Hollywood Vampires stuff. It's like, okay, I didn't need any more than a minute and a half. I was going to say something stupid eventually. So like, I'm glad he moved on. I have that memory that I was pretty cool and had that moment. Yeah.
Perfect short interaction. Right. That's awesome. I love that. So that was the one that I could think of.
I can't believe I didn't think of that when you brought up the question. Like, oh yeah, I met you.
No, but it was a leading question, because I thought of that one and I was just like, that I don't know. I think I would have a hard time with that as well. And I usually, similar to you, don't get too like tongue-tied or starstruck, but that probably would have tripped me up for sure.
Yeah. I made it through unscathed.
You got it. You came out the other side. Another thing that I think about when I think of you and touring and traveling all over the place is food, because I feel like you are, well, should we say you're a foodie? I don't know. Is that the right word?
I would definitely say so. Luckily I have a metabolism and I play a physical instrument because I eat way too much, and I'm obsessed with it. And especially on the road, there's, when you live in your own town, there's a handful of restaurants that you like. When you're on the road, you're like, I gotta try something brand new. Or you go back. I can't wait to get back to St. Paul. There's a place called Afro Deli there that I love. It's an African restaurant. Just like, that's things on the road that you really look forward to. Like, you look at the schedule, go, okay, I'm gonna eat there. Oh, I love that spot. There's the, whatever it would be. So yeah, I love food, and I like to cook as much as I can. It's harder now with 2 little kids because you're cooking for the adults, and then you also have to cook something else. It's like, I'll just cook something easier.
Yes. I often cook 2 meals. Yeah. Exactly. And I have my son has a rating system, so he rates.
Nice.
The food. Oh yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I have a whole thing on my phone, like my notes called The Road, and every state, and it's like, California, San Diego, restaurants, bars, hotel, friends. Like, so I know when I'm going to see, like, oh, that's right, there's that one place I went to, and Sarah lives here, and I love that hotel that I'm at, that kind of stuff. So someday I'll for all the touring people, and here's like a guide to where you need to eat and drink and stay and hang out.
So great. You should put that together. That should be like, you guys, I feel like people would pay for that probably.
I'll get it for free, whatever.
Right. Well, that's true. Or that. But I remember being in Nashville once, and I posted that I was in Nashville, and you immediately were like, Sarah, go here for breakfast. This is where you need to go. And I was like, yes, I will do that, Daxx. I will, because I trust you.
I hope it was good.
It was great. I remember what it was. It was Biscuit Love in the Gulch.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Right. That place is great.
Delicious. Yeah. I'll never forget that, because it was so good. But again, like you said, like, that's something I would write down and be like, okay, have to go back there. So I have to ask you, where is the best food on tour? Is there a city that you're like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going?
I mean, New York City, you can't go wrong because there's just everything there. But on the West Coast, I'm a Mexican by heart. Like, I was born in the wrong body because I literally could just eat. It's kind of become a running joke that my obsession with tacos and burritos is just kind of, it should be illegal. But when I get to California, then it's just no holds barred. Just how much can I possibly eat in 4 days?
How much Mexican food can I put into my body, right?
But we go to Japan quite often, luckily, because Cheap Trick really made their name there. And I mean, Japanese food in Japan is just incredible.
Yeah. and so much different, right?
Yeah,
I feel like
right.
it's
Yeah, I mean, like everything else, it becomes commercialized, Americanized over here. But the basic idea, we all kind of know what Japanese food is, but then you go there and it's just better. Their fish is caught there like that day for the most part. And
yes.
I just think food all around the world is just, it's similar. There's so many different cultures that use cumin or cumin, however you pronounce it.
Yes.
You know, like Mexican food is very similar to African food, which is very, you know, the schnitzel is similar to, you know, something that is in Mexican culture. You know, that polka music is the same as Mexican music. If you ever like the accordion or oompa oompa.
Right. A lot of borrowing
Yeah.
and you know, adjusting
Absolutely.
it, right? And speaking of Japan too, one thing I think about Japan and food is the presentation. That's always amazing to me with everything. So it's so focused on that, not just the taste, but the presentation of the food.
I think Japan in general is that way. Like
right.
Everything is so clean. Everything is so the way it should be. And they're always like 15 years ahead of us in technology. And, you know,
right.
Yeah, I was there one day and I was walking past a construction site and, you know, there's a big building. They had a fence around it, you know, like a barricade kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also this cement truck comes pulling out and 4 guys start hosing the wheels off before he pulled on the street because they didn't want the dirt to come on
the street.
It's like, that's a next level OCD kind of
right.
But right. The whole country, origami and all that, they manicure their trees differently and
right.
Food presentation is great. And that country is just my favorite.
It is incredible. And one thing too that it reminds me of is you know, I was there in 2018, so pre-pandemic, and noticing, of course, you know, in Asia in general, the mask wearing, and thinking to myself, how smart would it be if we, you know, if I have a cough or a sneeze or something to kind of like keep that to myself, right? Like, but we never thought of it. Like it wasn't something that we did in America.
In the 70s, maybe even earlier. Like if you don't feel well, you put a mask on. And now it's become such a taboo, you know.
Of course.
Dividing topic that I'd rather not go into it. But yeah, they've been.
Of course, yeah.
They've been doing it for years. It's not like suddenly it's this new thing that, you know.
Yes, and we won't go into the mask wearing topic, but just thinking of the mindset of, you know, keeping the tires clean, keeping the germs to yourself, like that thought process, I think is absolutely interesting to see in a different country.
And it's, think of others, like I want to keep the street clean for the citizens and I want to keep my cold away from news people so that they don't, you know, like I'm just trying to be nice to people. You know, that's kind of our mantra in life, like just be good.
Just be a good person, be a good human, right? Be kind. Yeah, but okay, so traveling all over the world, if anyone wants to find your tour dates, right? So look those up. Yep. Get some tickets. It's such an awesome show. Who will you be out with on this year?
This year we're going to do a couple makeup weeks with Rod Stewart this summer. We did all last summer with him, but his production wasn't ready at the beginning, so we skipped Vancouver all the way down the West Coast until we got to. And then we were supposed to go to Denver, but we started in the Hollywood Bowl and then went from there. So we're going to go do Canada with him and the whole West Coast. But besides that, this year, 2023, is just a little slower paced and just us because next year, 2024, is the 50th anniversary. So we're really gearing up to do a big event, which I can't talk about just yet, but it's going to be, you know, lots of special guests and lots of cool things going on and just celebrating 50 years, which is insane.
It is insane and incredible. Like what a milestone.
Yeah. Not many bands can say that, honestly.
No, not at all. So we should look for tour dates this year and pay attention to something announced about how the 50th anniversary will be celebrated.
Yeah, that won't come out anytime real soon, but definitely we'll start promoting that later. And you know, it's hard. I have a website. I think it's daxxnielsen.com. I don't know, but
yes, it is.
I play with a lot of other people as well when I have the chance. So I need to get a place where I have my tour dates up. You know, it's mostly Cheap Trick because, you know, they work so much that I don't have a ton of time. But a couple of weeks ago, I drummed for Portugal the Man one night.
Oh, nice.
Love those guys. And I used to play for Brandy Carlisle, who's now multi Grammy award winning artist. But, I try to not just do Cheap Trick. I try to, when I have any free time, I like to play with as many people as possible. So I'll always post about that kind of stuff on my Instagram. And one of these days I'll dust off the laptop and put my tour dates on my actual website. But
yes, yeah, absolutely. Because I do want people to see you play with the different artists as well. And Brandy, I saw that. I didn't know that you played with Brandy, I don't think. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, she's one of my favorites, favorite songwriters, just beautiful.
I knew she was going to do well. Like I knew she was going to, because I toured on her second album, which is the Story, which Matt Chandler recorded, but then I did the tour for that. And then a year or two of other things. And I always knew like she's going to be able to sell out theaters, like 2,000 people at night for the rest of her career. She's got one of those voices and songs.
Yes.
I was dead wrong. She's selling out 4 nights at Red Rocks and the Gorge and 5 nights at Madison Square Garden. I'm like, oh, I meant theaters like that, like 2,000, 15,000 a night, so good for them. It's great. Happy for their success. I'm glad I could be a part of that at one point.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I went from that pretty much right to Cheap Trick. So I've been working. I'm happy.
You have been. You're always busy, and then the home recording stuff is just amazing. And I can't wait to see what Mitch does with your space.
I know I should show everybody real quick. Give me 1 second. Speaking of audio mute, he sent me this, which makes me cry every day. So this is the material. Hi, Tracy.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what all this stuff is. That's my old studio, which is slightly bigger than this little room. But he sent me this. This is made out of audio mute material.
Yes.
And it's high definition printed. So you can do this in your room, in your studio. You print anything you want. Carter McLean, I think that's here. McLean.
Yeah.
He just had Mitch come back out, and Mitch did his favorite albums. Like his favorite jazz albums. He made these giant squares of the vinyl, but they're audio mute product. To absorb acoustical treatment. So I can't wait to see what he's gonna do in here. It's gonna, and I mean, you can't tell, but it's loud in here.
Yeah, it's going to be a difference. I can't wait to hear the before and after. I love when Mitch does the before and after tests, because it's incredible. And this studio space too. I mean, we're singing Mitch's praises and audio mute, but it really is incredible the difference. There's a before and after video of this space, and it was so echoey, and it kind of makes me want to do my entire house in audio mute materials.
Well, you would think behind you is real wood, or you think that's real tile on the wall. And it's like this absorbed. It's incredible. I can't say enough.
It really is great. So shout out again to Mitch. And if anyone wants to follow along with you, Instagram, is that the best place you're at?
Yeah, that's my only one at this point. I stopped. We won't say the names. Instagram is my only one at this point. Seems to be gets to the point, and it's what I represent myself best on at this point.
It's great. So at Cheap Trick Daxx, I will link everything in the YouTube description and the podcast show notes, so that anyone can just click on that, follow you, find you, go see you play, check out the band. So great.
We'll make music together too from the comfort of our own homes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Daxx. It's been awesome catching up with you. And
thank you, Sarah. I've been watching all these, and I'm like, man, I would love to talk to Sarah one day. And then you texted me the other day, and I was like, I'm honored.
I love that. It's been a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to see you again in person. Maybe when you come back through Boston, I'll see you, or somewhere or another.
That's right.
Yes, we'll have fun.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be flying, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And we'll go eat together. We'll go find good food.
We will have good food. That's the plan. Good food, great music, great friendship.
Absolutely. Years
I
and years.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daxx. I will see you soon.
I'll be there. Bye,
okay.
Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.